Today we're going to take a look at a build of Alela Artful Provocateur. This spell costs 1 generic, white, blue, and black to cast for a legendary creature, Faerie Warlock. It has flying, death touch, and lifelink. Other creatures you control with flying get +1/+0, and whenever you cast an artifact or enchantment spell, create a 1/1 blue Faerie creature token with flying, and it is a 2/3. So this deck is all about artifacts and enchantments and casting them to capitalize on our ability of our commander, and then giving them a buff and swinging in for big damage pretty quickly. So let's take a look at the suite of creatures that we have. We are kind of light on creatures because our commander, as well as another effect in the deck, is going to help us to make some, but a lot of our creatures are artifacts, so they will trigger our commander. We're running Esper Sentinel in the deck for some card draw, Baleful Strix for some card draw, as well as flying and death touch. Ethereum Sculptor is going to make some of our artifact spells cost 1 less to cast. Obira is here because whenever another Faerie enters a battlefield under our control, each opponent's going to lose a life. So as we're doing things with our deck and we're making Faeries with our commander, Obira is going to help to add some life loss to our opponents. Bloodline Pretender is here because we're going to choose, of course, Faerie as a creature type, and then whenever another creature of the chosen type, i.e. Faerie, enters a battlefield under our control, we're going to put a +1/+1 counter on Bloodline Pretender, helping it to get big. Brazen Borrower is here because it's kind of a 2-for-1 card. It is a Faerie. Foundry Inspector makes our artifacts cost 1 less. Scion of Una makes our Faeries bigger. And then they also have Shroud, which is nice so that our opponents can't do stuff to them. Tagwell is here to give a buff, as well as whenever a Faerie we control dies, each opponent's going to lose some life, so it helps them drain some life from our opponents there. The new Alela is here because if we cast a spell on our opponent's turn, we're going to make a Faerie. And then whenever one or more of our Faeries that we control deal combat damage to a player, we're going to goad a creature that player controls so that they can't attack us with it and they have to attack each other. Glen Elendra Liege is here because it's going to help to buff up our Faeries and creatures. Mirkwood Bats, another way to drain some life from our opponents. Phyrexian Metamorph to help copy stuff, whether that's one of our creatures or artifacts or something from our opponent. Elish Norn to pump up our stuff, but also reduce the things on our opponent's side. And Thought Monitor, which is, of course, an artifact, so it's got some card draw in it to help trigger our commander. Sorceries we're kind of light on, but that's okay. We don't want to be doing stuff at sorcery speed. Of course, we're playing tutors in the deck. Distant Melody is here so that we can draw some cards. If we've got a good amount of Faeries on the board, we choose them, of course, and then we draw some cards from that. Raise the Palisade is nice because we're going to choose Faerie, and we're going to return all the other things that aren't Faeries to their owner's hand, and some of those things might be ours, like Thought Monitor, and that's going to allow us to draw some cards. Farewell is a good board wipe and get rid of things that we need gone at that moment, whether it's artifacts, creatures, enchantments, whatever it is, graveyards. We can choose and get rid of those things. Instants are what you would expect from any deck. We've got counter magic, we've got tutors, we've got removal. One nice new counter spell that we've added is Spell Stutter from the Wilds of Eldraine set because it's 2 mana, so it's not bad at all to cast. And then we're going to counter target spell unless its controller pays 2 additional plus an additional 1 for each Faerie. So even if we only control 1 Faerie, they're having to pay 3 mana. So that's going to be hard for them to counter it, most likely. Then we are loaded on artifacts. We have things like Aether Spellbomb, which is ways to get rid of things or draw a card. Grafdigger's Cage to shut off some of those graveyard shenanigan decks. Sensei's Divining Top so that we can manipulate our library and see what we've got going on. Skull Clamp so we can clamp some of our Faeries to kill them and draw 2 cards. Cursed Totem to turn off some of the things of our opponents. Lightning Greaves gives our commander, or whatever we choose of ours, protection. Throne of the Godpharaoh is going to do some damage on end step after we've attacked with a bunch of Faeries. Then Throne of the Godpharaoh is going to drain some of our opponents, which is nice. Strixhaven Stadium, besides being a mana rock, as we're attacking into our opponents and dealing damage, this might be a way to kill somebody by getting 10-point counters on Strixhaven Stadium and then removing them and take a player out. Aetherflux Reservoir to gain some life and then drain our opponents if we need to. Mystic Forge is an infinite loop with Sensei's Divining Top and Aetherflux and one of the cost reducers. If we have those out, Then Sensei's Divining Top can become free, we can storm off and then pop somebody with an Aether Flux. Norn's Annex is here to give us some protection so that our opponents can't attack us unless they pay white, or Phyrexian Mana, which is 2 life, so that we have a little bit of protection if our creatures are kind of down or we're just swung out with them. Enchantments, we have Bitter Blossom, which is going to help to make us fairies, which is great. Blind Obedience to help slow our opponents down. Favorable Winds to buff up our fairies. Intangible Virtue does the same thing, and it gives them Vigilance, which is nice. Anointed Procession, so that if we make 1 fairy, instead we would make 2 of them. Smothering Tithe for some mana. These are the things that you would typically expect in a deck of these Esper colors, especially if we're trying to build it around our commander. If you have experience playing Alela and have other recommendations, other things that you can think of that we did not add, please let us know in the comments below. We'd love to hear some feedback about the deck, as well as other things we may not have included, or just your own experiences with the deck. Let us know in the comments below. We really appreciate it.